work is something I hated when I was young. Because for me, I grew up in the village. Many of you are still young, but for us who grew up in those old times, every time you did something wrong, they sent you to dig. Anybody who have similar background like me, or all of you are born in the city, except a few of us here. Some of you are city born, so you don't really. Let me see the hands again. Then I can see that I'm not the only one in that generation. Now the hands are more. Okay. So we grew up in the villages. So anytime you made a mistake, you go and dig. So I grew up with a very bad attitude about work. I looked at work as a punishment. As long as you look at work as a punishment, you will not deliver. You will never deliver because you look at it as a necessary evil. That attitude does not bring out the best out of you. And that's where everything starts. Your attitude towards work. A mindset about work. You must have a good attitude about work so that you may do your best. The best comes when you are enjoying what you are doing. You are saying, thank God it's Monday. I'm going out. Thank God now another day has come. I'm going to. Now that attitude comes from within. And so what I'm sharing today and this session is first of all to change that attitude about work. So work was ordained by God. So God is a worker himself. He's not a dreamer. He's a worker. God worked for 6 days and rested how many days? Many of us want to work one day and rest. Can you imagine? Majority of the people in our time, if you gave them and you told them you'll be working one day and rest 6 days, they'll say, oh, this is what a wonderful job this is. Majority of the people want to work one day and rest 6 days. No, God is a worker. And Jesus one day said, my Father all the time is working and also I'm working. So God enjoys to work. He likes everything he did. Every single day he worked, he said it is good on the first day. Second day, it is good. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, he said it is very good. In other words, he enjoyed his work. Can you ask your neighbor, do you enjoy your work? Do you enjoy your work? Do you? Okay. Okay. Now, why is work important? Work is the means by which man exercises dominion over nature. Can you please make a note of that? When God created man, man was different from all the other creation. He said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let him exercise and establish his dominion on earth. So work helps us to establish our dominion on earth. And I'm going to explain that dominion. The dominion he told us, he envisaged, he wanted us to have, can only be achieved by work. So you cannot exercise the dominion that God created you to have. You can't exercise it. You can't establish it without work. So it is only through work that we exercise our dominion on earth. And that is God's idea for you and me. That is his goal about you. The difference between you and a lion, a leopard, an elephant, is that for you, you can work. Those animals use instinct to survive. So they chase, like a lion chases antelopes, eats them, goes, sleeps, and the next day, man is different. You are not just living for eating. President calls it a chida chonka. Not just for survival. You work to change your environment, to exercise dominion over nature. This is important. Over nature. Let me put it this way. It has been raining outside. Were you feeling the rain here? No. Why? Because man has ability to say, rain, you remain outside. Close the windows. That you have authority over nature. When it's cold outside, you warm the inside. You have power over nature. When it's hot, you close the windows, the glasses, and you switch on the AC. So it is cool here. That is exercising dominion over nature. Animals can't do that. They don't have power to do that. When it's raining, it rains, but they can hide in the house, but they cannot. For us, we have power to exercise dominion over nature. We go to Bujagadagali and dam that water and turn electricity. That is exercising dominion over what? Nature. That comes only by work. To the degree we do it, to that degree we exercise dominion. We establish our dominion. That is God's idea about work. The more you do it, the more you work both with your hands and your mind, the better. That's how we exercise dominion. If you don't want to work, nature will always have authority over you. The more you work, the more you think, the more authority you have over nature. Think about our friends in Europe and America who only have one season a year. Here we have two seasons of planting because of our weather. For them, they only have what? One. In that one season, they plant, they produce enough food that they put it in stores, that sometimes we even who have 2 seasons end up dying of what? Why? The failure is that. Exercising dominion over what? Nature. That is the problem. How come those who have only one season can give us aid in food? So only man through work turns the earth's raw materials into finished products. That's what we call value addition for his own and heaven's benefit. It's only through work that we turn the earth from its raw materials into its finished products. Whatever we see here, Adam had, but in raw material. These machines were there, laptops were there, microphones were there, iPhones were there, but they were in their raw material what? Form. From that time until now, man has been working and changing and transforming the earth, taking its raw material form into finished products. The laptop I'm using here, the major component is the what? The chips. Those chips are made from sand. Sand. The more you think, apply knowledge on sand, you have computer chips. A computer chip, this laptop here is about to 8 million, more than that. Yeah, about 10 plus millions. But a whole Fuso or Sinotrack is only about 2.5 million. You know, the more you turn it from raw material into finished products, the more value. Man adds value on the earth and he creates wealth. We create wealth by adding value on the raw material that God left us and gave us, and we've been adding value ever since. Animals don't add value. They just keep eating, and they're in the ecosystem, and that's all they do. That's the difference with us, with human beings. Look at how man has evolved. So first of all, we have to have a proper attitude that God is the owner of everything. He has delegated man to be his steward over the creation. So God's ownership is exercised by man as we are in proper fellowship and attitude, so that our stewardship becomes better and better all the time. That triangle, you can, since you now have modern phones, you can just snap and have it, so you don't have to draw it. It will take so long. God on one side, man on the other side, and the creation. This was disrupted at the fall. It was a disruption of that. We may not go into that for now, but this is how God looked at us. You, as a steward over his creation, including the work that you are doing. You are just a steward there. You have been trusted with that job, that position. On behalf of God, all of you are servants of God wherever you are. I am a servant of God behind the pulpit. You are a servant of God behind the desk. And whatever other responsibilities you do, you are a servant of God. You're a steward. How you do that work, the Lord is watching all the time. So when finally you stand before the Lord, you'll be answering for your specific responsibility that you carry. Okay? Look at the progression. Nature-based is how we started. The economy was nature-based. It was agrarian. Natural resources mainly in agriculture, fishing, minerals, oil. 90% of the population were in this. Then you had the tools, capital, influence from landlord. All this was connected with land. Tools were made to cultivate the land. Capital was how much land you have. Your influence as a landlord was how much land you had, because land was the main issue. And so the landlords were the most powerful. As man has continued to work and add value, that changed. Then from 1860, The industrial-based economy comes in. That's the industrial age, industrial explosion, clothing, vehicles, planes, and so on. Then we see steam engines. The focus was from land to industries. So wealth was now measured by stock. Whoever had stock now was the big person, were the big guys. It's no longer the landlords. Then it's changed. It was one who had the big industries. Since 1956 to date, it changed again to service-based economy. Services like hotels, transport, luxury, and so on now started to take the center stage. We entered into the information age. Telephones, radios, TVs, computers. Knowledge is power. The power now is in the knowledge. Who has more knowledge? Now, in our day, this one is very close and similar. This is now knowledge-based economy, where we have the digital age coming in. IT, Facebook, WhatsApp, Amazon. These are the guys now who have a lot of what? Money. They are the billionaires. You see, you know those names. Now you no longer know who is the biggest landlord. Nobody is now interested in that. Who has the biggest land in the whole? Who is interested in that? Not even the industries anymore. You see, we know these people more than anybody else. Mark Zuckerberg, and then Bill Gates. This was the change. That's as we go on. As a nation, the more we understand this process, the better. Because that's how economy moves. Even including this particular organization, institution. Very, very important that we move towards the where the world is gravitating towards. And so, therefore, we have to look at work in that perspective. Now, let me continue having given that background. Then we can progress with work. By the way, that why that is important is nations that have understood that are moving very fast. Look at China. China is really chasing US. Yeah? US produces about 60,000 scientists every year. China and India produce 550,000 scientists every year, more than 500,000 scientists. And for them, they understood this a while ago. They understood this digital age is going to take the center stage. And they have been able to move 300 million people from poverty. Can you imagine? From poverty in one generation is a major achievement, an exploit. 300 million people out of poverty in one generation. And that's how, as a nation, today we're not going to talk a lot about that, but it's so important that the people who are leaders have the proper perspective, attitude about work, but also understanding the trends. Number 4, on the points that we were making, at man's fall, work was not cast. It was the ground that was cast. I used to think that work is a curse. How many of you thought like me? Not very many. You're blessed. Oh, you already thought like me, eh? I already thought work is not cast. It's the ground that was cast. God says to Adam, I've cast the ground because of you. So the work is not cast, but because the ground was cast, now he had to toil. Toil is something that is important to understand. The curse on the ground turned man's work into what? Into toil. What is toil? Toil is that mindless, repetitive, drudgery, and dehumanizing labor that does not include creative imagination. That is not for human beings. Let's read toil, the definition. What is toil? Mindless, repetitive, drudgery, and dehumanizing labor that does not include creativity. That wasn't for us. It was the fall that brought in this toil. Let me give you my example of what I told you what we used to do in our village. It would take us 3 hours to just get one jerrycan because we had to walk many miles away. There was one well in that whole area, and water was such a problem. And one jerrycan would take us, those days we didn't have jerrycans. We had the tins. Debbie. I'm glad I'm not the only one now here. Okay. Our generation used the Debbie, a Debbie, tin. Hey, that they used to sell oil in those tins. So we would do, and then you would carry the tin. If it ever fell down on your toe, it's gone. Okay, so so we used debes, and for us to get one debe, 3 hours, and every day we had at least to get 2 debes. So you imagine taking 6 hours just for what? For 40 liters of what? Of water. 6 hours. 6 hours is a quarter of the day. The day is 24 hours. So you take a quarter of your day just to collect water. So imagine spending 80 years on earth, and a quarter of that, you stand before God, and you have to account for your time on earth, the 80 years. A quarter of it, 20 years was just collecting water. Can you imagine? So that is what I'm talking about, toil. You spent a quarter of your life on earth just collecting water. Now, that's not for human beings. That's why we have to think, so that we increase more on the thinking than just the what? There's so many people in the village. They are struggling and working so much with very, very little. That is toil. Okay? Man's loss of authority over nature led to toil. That fall had 2 effects. One is moral, inside, sinful, corrupt, inside. But the second was ecological. Our stewardship was affected. It was not only us becoming morally corrupt, but it also affected our stewardship. You remember that triangle? The triangle: God, man, creation. So when the vertical relationship was affected, the horizontal was also what? Affected. Our relationship with nature was affected, the ecological side. So Scripture distinguishes between work and toil. To work is to be like God. He is a worker, a creator. While toil is a curse and a consequence upon human sin. So for us here, when we come to talk about work, we need to distinguish, to understand that God wants us to work very, very hard and achieve much. And that has to include thinking, planning, strategizing. Working smarter than just working what? Harder. Working smarter. Okay? That's very, very important. Okay. I want to continue with some timeless principles about work now. These are in the Bible, in Colossians chapter 3, verse 22 to 25. Paul lists some few points that I want us to read together. Are you able to read from wherever you are? I want us to be able to read. I'm a teacher who wants everybody attentive and involved. Okay, we are going to read together. Let's read verse 22. Servants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not only when their eyes are on you as pleasers of men, but in simplicity of purpose, with all your heart, because of your reverence for the Lord, and as a sincere expression of your devotion to him. Whatever may be your task, work at it heartily, from the heart, from the soul, as something done for the Lord and not for men, knowing with all certainty that it is from the Lord and not from men that you receive the inheritance, which is your real reward. The one whom you are actually serving is the Lord. For he who deals wrongfully will reap the fruit of his folly and be punished for his wrongdoing. And with God, there is no partiality, no matter what a person's position is, whether ED, whether director, whether middle manager, whether office attendant. That one I've added, but that's what it means. That whatever position to him is not important. You must be, you as wherever you are, at any level, God expects you to work with all your might. Now, let's look at let's look at the points that he has raised in there. Okay? Are you ready? For the headlines, what were the key points? Let me pick out the key points. He's saying maintain a submissive attitude when you are working. Submissive attitude means when you are working and the manager and whoever your immediate boss or supervisor, you give your full support to that manager, to that director, your supervisor. This is very, very important. You can't work undermining the person you are working under. Very, very important principle. We see that in Daniel, we see that in David, King David, and people who always excelled had a clear, very, very clear understanding that I must submit completely to my boss, to my supervisor. Whoever your immediate supervisor is, you fully support him. You want to succeed, but you want to make him succeed and shine more. You don't pull him down so that you do what? That attitude, you are sowing a bad what? Seed. Because one day it will be you. Yeah, so whatever you sow, you do what? Later I will come back to that point because it's a very, very important principle. So while you are there, you are supposed to really fully support and make your boss shine. That's a very, very important principle that God uses to promote people. Because God does not call leaders. He calls servants. It's the good and faithful servants who later become what? Leaders. So for you to succeed and become a great leader, you must start with being a good servant. Be a very good servant to your boss, to your manager, to your, I don't know your hierarchy here, but I'm sure you have different what? Hierarchies here. Yours is to make your boss shine, even if they don't mention your name. You worked all night. As long as your boss shines, that should be your joy. Because a day will come when other people will pay the same service to you. You are sowing a seed that you will do what? You reap. So very important to have a submissive attitude, not a competition in companies, in organization, where you have that spirit of competition, of undermining others. It kills the teamwork. It kills teamwork. You want somebody to be painted bad, and you want to shine more. And so it is eye service. When the boss is not there, everybody is in rush. The moment the boss enters, you go back to your laptop and type it as if you are breaking it. That is eye service. You are just working for recognition. Eh? Now, that is what he's talking about here. Whether somebody is watching you or not, you are totally committed to your work. You are always the first one to finish to report. They ask you to report within a week, within 4 days before you are finished. This is the attitude you will maintain. Number 2, be single-minded and purposeful. Once you are in a position, you want to leave an indelible mark there so that long after you've left, they'll always talk about Sam. When Sam was there, things really. So very important that you are single-minded, you are here. You are not sidetracked. You are here, you are busy, you are concentrating. Many people are not single-minded. The moment they get a job here, they are always reading the newspapers, not just to get knowledge. They're looking now for greener what? Pastures. So where they are now, they will just add that one on their CV. So they're always attending another course and another course and another city. Not because they want to be better here, but they want their CV to take a whole briefcase of a CV. So they are not after work. They're after. No, that is wrong. That's very, very wrong. So be single-minded, be purposeful. While I'm here, I'm now here. Until God gets me out here, now I'm going to give my whole life here. My time here. My mind here. My education here. My skills here. I'm committed to succeed. The people who are not single-minded, when things are difficult, they are the first one to run away. The way Jesus called that, he called them hirings. Hirings are here to get money. The third is work is the expression of your devotion to God, and it's your true worship. Work is the expression of your devotion to God. The way you worship God is your work. Adam did not have a church or mosque to attend a service on a weekend. How was he worshiping God? By his work. Your work is worship before God. Because when you get to your place of worship at the end of the week, they will say, now that we have finished all this, let us now worship God with our offer. Have you heard that? Because that money represents the education you got, which made you to get that job, and you've been working for the whole month and you got your payment. So when you bring money into the basket, God does not look at the paper. He sees all that involved. Your mind, your strength, your hard work, your education is represented by the money you are putting in the what? This one has just missed. Let me think. She's not wise. Yeah. I saw some of those eyes on the other side. I saw the eyes on the other side. They were saying, take it. Okay. So, work, therefore, is worship. So when you're working, when the Bible says, work, serve, worship God with all strength, with all your mind, so that's what it means. So that's why when you're bringing and putting money in the basket, it represents what you did. And God receives it as such. So your work during the week, you take it later into the basket. That's why from now, don't allow anybody who sits with you and say, the basket is soon getting here. Can you give me some money so that I can put in the basket? You're putting in somebody's worship. It's not yours. Now tell your neighbor, church. Yeah. Okay. Because you'll be presenting somebody else's worship. So your work is done as unto God, not what? Men. To me, this was a big transformation. To me, this was a revolution. When I understood that whatever I'm doing it as unto the what? People here, your bosses inclusive, are just your immediate supervisor. The ultimate employer is who? The ultimate employer is who? Your boss is your immediate supervisor, but your ultimate employer is God. So it's the one who is all the time marking you, watching and marking your work to reward diligence and to punish folly. Have you ever thought about that? That God is every day, when you clock in, is watching your work. That's why I say those who are really single-minded, committed, is promoting, keeps promoting them, because they have a proper attitude at their work. They are putting in their best. They are doing all that it takes. They are the first ones always to be considered for promotion. If you look at it, people who have that good attitude, they will always be the first one to be promoted. Others will keep complaining, no. But you check on them. Every time they ask them performance, they will always give an excuse. The report which is supposed to be 1 week, they bring it after a month. They come into the meeting like this one. We all agree we are now going to do A, B, C, D. All of us are going to do this. You do this. They look for something that will not work. There will be an excuse. You see what you have said, manager, that can't work here. So they, out of the 10 things, they look for just one. The 9 things will work, but this one will. So they always look for the negative thing. And what happens? Every time the meeting ends, they'll ask, they will always have a meeting after the meeting. A meeting after what? Can you write it down? I'm never going to attend a meeting after the meeting again. Don't call me again. In a meeting after the meeting. Those people who have a meeting after the meeting to question, to query, to ask them, why didn't you raise that issue there when we were there? The next time, kindly tell your neighbor, the next time you call me into the meeting after the meeting, I'm going to ask you, why didn't you raise that point when we were there in the meeting? Why didn't you raise it? Okay? So, that means that every work you do is paid by who? Because it's your ultimate employer. For me, this was revolutionary. It changed my work ethic. I understood that whether I'm paid or not, everywhere I go, preach, teach, serve communities, what? Whether people appreciate me or not is not important. God still what? Will pay me. Oh, what a relief. Can you say, Now I'm going to show you something else that comes out of that. When you've worked faithfully like God requires, He will credit your account justly. Because our governments and organizations may not have enough money to pay you commensurate to the work we are putting in. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? Our salaries, of course, are not very good. Our allowances, they're not. So for me, when I understood this, that God will pay you commensurate to your work, you should say amen. Because he's just and he does not cheat. Remember, he's your ultimate what? Employer. So he pays you commensurate to your work. That is so relieving. So if you are underpaid, he credits your account with the balance. If what credits comes, what he credits you comes to you in various ways. But if you are overpaid, you can't keep what is not yours. And I'm going to illustrate that one too. Because your contract is 2 million, but the work you are doing is really 500,000. Yeah, so look at what happens. So now I'm going to illustrate that one, and I want you to be very, very attentive. In fact, fasten your seat belts, because we'll be running into turbulence now. Okay? Now, but before I illustrate that, let me give you one principle, and then it will make sense in what I'm going to illustrate. I'll start with Ephesians chapter 4. Before I illustrate that principle that I've just mentioned, let me add another principle that will make you understand it better. It is in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 28. Now, what does this mean? I want you to look at the words that I've highlighted. Stop what? Number 2. Then number 3. Now, these principles are very, very important. They establish a principle in the universe about work. When he says stop stealing, that is commandment number 8. By him saying don't steal, he has already established ownership. Because you can't steal what does not have an owner. Isn't that so? So if there is stealing, then there must be ownership. Because you can't. How many of you remember that one? Now, this earth, the way he created it, when you find a stone there, it's fine. You can take it, no owner. But the moment you put some work on that stone, paint or a sculpture or what, you have added value. Now it has become your own. So you have added value, and so ownership is like that. You've created wealth right there by putting your mind on that stone, by that wood, that sculpture. Now it has value. You have created wealth. People are going to come and pay for a piece of wood which was there, lying there, but you put work on it, and now you have added value. That you have added ownership. So God ordained the ownership and property. Ownership and property only comes from what? That is the only legitimate means of acquiring ownership before God. Once you have put work on that stone, on that wood, you've created wealth. Now you have title to that property. In the spirit realm, it's as real as these titles. You know the land titles we normally. When you buy land, how can you secure that land? By getting a what? That's how you secure your ownership. You have a title. It has 3 sections. One section is the details of the land. The second section is about ownership. They put your name there, the date you got it, and the agreement, which is always stored in the Ministry of Lands. That section number 2 explains the ownership. The third section, anybody who has encumbrance on it or a claim on the land. So a land title in the natural secures your ownership. But in the spirit, the work is also like that. You have a title every time you work. Every day you leave your house and you get to work and you work that day, you have acquired ownership and title to some money, to some value. Is that clear? And the only legitimate means to get that title and ownership is what? Work. You can pass on what you have worked. For example, if a father dies, he can bequeath his children. But the original way in which money, worth came or property came is by what? Work. Then after that, you can give. Now, understanding that, now you can understand the illustration that I'm going to now make.